Yeah, what am I doing making another video? Well, this is just an addendum to my previous video, the Black Swan build. The day after I released that video, I realized that in my quest to get enemies to freeze as often as possible, I stopped seeing the forest for the trees. The core idea of that build, increasing different parts of the damage formula, is powerful enough that we don't need to focus on cryo. Now, the Black Swan will still be stronger against enemies that have a tendency to freeze, and there's great defensive value in slowing and stopping enemies with cryo, not to mention how fun it is. But this new version, which I'm calling CHROMATIC SWAN, seeks instead a rainbow of elemental damage and is a better all-around melee build. I'm going to try to keep this brief. For in-depth explanations about the core mechanics of this build, see the aforementioned video. Here's the modified skill tree for this build, CHROMATIC SWAN. As you can see, we're not taking any skills in the blue tree. We're not trying to freeze enemies, we don't need Violent Tapestry. We don't pick up Do Harm because we can get the same effect with Jab Cross. Yes, Ties That Bind gets increased damage sharing from Jab Cross, and all you have to do is melee. Not exactly a tough ask. We don't get points in Restless, which pains me, but that's alright. Our cooldown will be just over 10 seconds. So instead, we get to invest more into the green tree, for two benefits, tankiness and extra melee damage. For tankiness, we get our 5th point in Helping Hands, 2 points in Arms Deal, 4 into One with Nature, and 1 into Guardian Angel. Jab Cross was explained before, and then we can pick up Blitz for extra melee damage. On top of that, since we're not stacking Violent Tapestry, we don't need the Facepuncher. We can use the Breaker class mod. We need one with an extra point in Find Your Center, and as many points into Jab Cross as we can get. Personal space offers no benefit to us. The damage reduction on this class mod, coupled with our extra skills in the green tree, make us quite durable. We also need action skill cooldown rate, especially since we're not spec'd into Restless, and since we don't get the bonus cooldown rate from the Facepuncher. What we're lacking in extra damage from freezing enemies, we're making up for with another point into Find Your Center and with Blitz. Using the Breaker class mod and picking up the Blitz capstone is a more traditional form of melee build, but remember, we're also giving plenty of attention to the elemental part of the damage formula. Again, since cryo isn't our focus with this build change, we don't need a cryo stone static charge specifically. We still need the static charge, but the stone part can be any element. What we should aim for though is a variety of elements. That way we can take out triple health bar enemies and enemies with resistances or immunities. We can also take full advantage of Harmageddon and get up to 25% bonus damage. We get our shock from the static charge, and we can have our illuminated fist be fire or corrosive. If we get a corrosive or firestone, we can have our 3 strongest sources of damage deal all 3 main elements, fire, shock, and corrosive. Then we can cap it off with cryo and radiation anointments on our brawler's board and our fastball. But really, you can mix them up however you like. Just remember that you'll always have shock on the static charge, and the plus 100% melee anointment on the brawler's board is better than an elemental anointment, but the difference isn't that great, only 10 to 15%. As you can see, this build, CHROMATIC SWAN, has relaxed gear requirements, as opposed to Black Swan. We have more options for Brawler's Ward and Fastball anointments. We can choose any elemental stone static charge. There are some hard requirements though, a 300% Brawler's Ward, cooldown rate on your artifact in Breaker class mod, and a point into Find Your Center on the Breaker, and of course, a butt plug and a Facepuncher. We don't need to always be grasping the air with this build. We don't have rush stacks and no Violent Tapestry and extra cryo efficiency. We can just grasp the air once to proc anointments and then grasp an enemy. Rinse and repeat. That's it. A few closing notes. You can use an elemental stone with the Commander Planetoid artifact as opposed to static charge if that's all you have. You won't be able to sustain as well from it, and therefore you'll have to be extra nimble and careful, but it can work. It's like hard mode for this build. Also, and this may or may not be of any help, but I've rebound my melee button to my middle mouse button. That is, I have it bound to clicking the scroll wheel down. Not scrolling it down, but clicking it into the mouse. I do this for all FPS games that I play, and I find it intuitive because it's right next to the trigger button, and you can keep your left hand free to move around as you like. Lastly, Mayhem 2.0 is coming soon. It's very likely that these builds will become irrelevant when that happens. However, there's a chance that it could actually be very powerful in Mayhem 2.0 immediately. If Gearbox implements some sort of scaling of melee damage with Mayhem levels, then the very base of our damage formula will automatically be increased, and this build will be ready for it. I don't consider this scenario likely though. They already left Melee behind when they introduced Mayhem 4. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Since this was pretty short, I'm going to close out the video by showing CHROMATIC SWAN running the takedown of Mayhem 4 just so you can see how capable this build is. Bye!